Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for a daily dose of Rivals of Ixalan spoilers. So, spoiler season for Rivals of Ixalan shouldn't officially start until the beginning of January, 2 full months from now. However, we got a surprise today. There are a couple of Rivals of Ixalan cards that are going to be promos for the Magic Open House, and we got them early. So we have two really sweet cards to talk about. One new card, one reprint. Just a quick warning before we jump into the cards. The Magic Open House actually takes place before Rivals of Ixalan releases. So if you get one of these cards from the Magic Open House, I don't believe it will be legal until the actual set of Rivals of Ixalan drops, so make sure you don't stick it in your decks right away, wait for Rivals of Ixalan. Anyway, let's talk about our sweet new Rivals of Ixalan cards in a very special, very early edition of Daily Rivals of Ixalan spoilers. So first off, we have a new Dinosaurs. Ghalta Primal Hunger, which is pretty interesting. 12 mana, you get a 12/12 with Trample. However, there's a bit of a twist. Ghalta Primal Hunger costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. Also worth noting, not only is Ghalta a legendary creature, it is a Elder Dinosaur, just like the Elder Dragon cycle, which is pretty sweet. So I'm expecting we'll get a whole cycle of these, most likely, which is pretty exciting. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about how Ghalta actually works, and it's kind of reminiscent of some cards we've seen in the past. Colony Hydra, Ghoul Tree, even Metalwork Colossus, if we're willing to move outside of green cards in specific. Basically, really big, really expensive things that get a discount for some condition being met. Colony Hydra costs less to cast for each green creature. Ghoul Tree, each creature in your graveyard. Metalwork Colossus might actually be the best comparison because it gets a mana reduction based on the converted mana cost of non-creature artifacts you control. Ghalta, on the other hand, all it cares about is creatures' power, so it's much less restricted than a lot of these other options. You don't gotta play artifacts, you don't even have to play green creatures, you don't gotta get creatures in your graveyard. All you gotta play is creatures, which most decks in Standard already do. So, for example, let's say we're playing Dinosaurs. If we have a Ripjaw Raptor out, if we have a Regisaur Alpha out, suddenly Ghalta is just 2 mana. It comes down with haste because of Regisaur Alpha, trampling over for 12 damage. That is actually potentially very, very powerful. Like, that's a pretty easy curve to go, like, turn 3 Ripjaw, turn 4 Regisaur Alpha, using some of the Dinosaur cost reduction effects that we have in the format, or Drover the Mighty. Ghalta just crushes in. It's way bigger than even Carnage Tyrant in that scenario, and is a super, super scary card. Being legendary keeps it in check a little bit, so you can't just stack up a ton of them on the battlefield, but in that type of draw, Ghalta is going to be insanely powerful. Even beyond Dinosaurs, if you look at Longtusk Cub, it's often 4 power, 5 power, Bristling Hydra, often 5 power, 6 power, Glorybringer, pretty big. It would be pretty easy for a Temur Energy deck, or some sort of 4-color energy deck, to play a Ghalta, taking advantage of the fact that you have all these big creatures sitting on the battlefield, having it come down really cheaply. Is it better than other options? I don't know. Like, even though Ghalta is only 2 mana, it is going to be 2 mana on turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, like, in the mid to late game, because it's going to be hard to get so much power on the battlefield that you can cast it earlier than that. So, that's the upside of Ghalta. It can be really cheap and come down for just 2 mana once you play a bunch of other creatures. The downside, which I think is going to be where the question is about Ghalta, is it is incredibly bad if you don't have creatures on the battlefield. So let's say you're playing the Dinosaur deck, you play your Ripjaw Raptor, you play your Regisaur Alpha, you're getting ready to slam this huge hasty Ghalta and just take over the game, crush your opponent with this Trampler, and your opponent has Fumigate. Then all of a sudden, your Ghalta is looking really, really bad. You have this 12 mana card that you are never going to cast fairly without the cost reduction rotting in your hand, when if it was a Glorybringer or a Ripjaw Raptor or a Regisaur Alpha, you could just easily cast it again. So it's a very swingy effect. The question is going to be, is Ghalta a win more card? If you already have so much power and toughness on the battlefield that you're able to cast Ghalta for 2 mana, do you need to have a Ghalta, or are you already winning the game? Does the downside of being so incredibly overcosted on an empty board, mean Ghalta is not good enough for standard. So I think where I'm at right now in the dark on Ghalta is it has a lot of potential to be powerful in standard, but it's also going to be a very high risk card to play. So I think that perhaps it'll be like a one of. It obviously gets better if you're playing dinosaur stuff like Gishath, where you're looking to slam some dinosaurs into play for free, or you have other big creatures synergies like Verdant Sun's Avatar gaining 12 life is a pretty huge swing when Ghalta comes down. So I think we could see Ghalta showing up as like a one of top end kind of mid-range threat in decks like dinosaurs, in decks like Temur Energy, but I have a hard time imagining it being a 4 of because it's very risky and there will be games where it's just stuck in your hand doing nothing. Before we move on to our second card, also wanted to mention really briefly Ghalta in Modern, and I don't expect it to be good enough. When you look at Ghalta, you're like, oh man, so I could like make my Death Shadow huge, play a single Death Shadow, gonna have like 10 power, then I suddenly can just cast Ghalta for 2 mana. That's gotta be awesome, right? And I think that the lack of consistency is even more problematic in Modern, especially when you consider that if you have a 12-12 Death Shadow, or a 10-10 Death Shadow, or you have a couple of Gurmag Anglers and Tassigurs, you're pretty much winning the game anyway, and you don't necessarily need another 12-12 Trampler. So I don't expect Ghalta to actually show up alongside Death Shadows and Gurmag Anglers in Modern. I think that there's cheaper, easier ways to cheat things into play that are more consistent, like just getting cards in your graveyard for Delve, losing some life with Shocklands for Death Shadow. As weird as it sounds, I think in Modern, Ghalta is actually just too much work and too inconsistent to be worth the slot. But it is worth pointing out that there are some cool synergies where you cast a couple of 1-mana Gurmag Anglers, get a Ghalta for 2 mana. That's a lot of power and toughness for a very, very low amount of mana. The other thing worth mentioning is Ghalta, obviously going to be sweet in Commander. It's an Elder Dinosaur. If you're playing a green deck, you're probably going to have big creatures anyway. It's important to note that the way that it is worded, where it's X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control, gives you a way to cheat on your Commander cost. So maybe Ghalta dies, it goes up to 14 mana, goes up to 16 mana. If you have a bunch of creatures out, which you probably will as a green deck playing a bunch of big creatures, you're still going to be able to cast it for 2 mana very consistently. So I think it has a lot of potential in a stompy, big creature, green style commander deck. Maybe as a commander, just coming down as a huge beater, only takes a couple of hits to kill your opponent with trample and commander damage. So I think there's some potential to kind of Voltron it up with Ghalta as your commander. So super spicy option there. Our other card today is a reprint, and it is very much on the other end of the spectrum. About as cheap as it gets, only 2 mana. We're talking Silvergill Adept here, which Silvergill Adept is an amazing reprint. Silvergill Adept, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of a modern staple in Merfolk. 2 mana, you get a 2/1. If you don't reveal a Merfolk when you cast it from your hand, you need to pay 3 more, so it's 5 mana in a non-Merfolk deck. But when it enters a battlefield, you draw a card, and this is exactly the type of reprint that Merfolk needed to potentially be very competitive in Standard. This goes a long, long way towards making the tribe work. One of the problems with Merfolk is they didn't really have a good 2-drop beyond Merfolk Branchwalker. Now with Silvergill Adept, we essentially have 8 copies of Merfolk Branchwalker, 2-drop Merfolks that draw us another card when they enter the battlefield, going to increase the power of the deck significantly. Both work incredibly well with Deeproot Waters, which is kind of one of the big payoffs right now for Merfolk. I mean, hopefully we get some more stuff in Rivals, but right now, just getting down to Deeproot Waters or 2 and casting Merfolks that draw you an extra card into more Merfolk, potentially, hopefully, is a great way to take over the game just by going wide. So I think that Silvergill Adept is going to take Merfolk from basically unplayable, because they just don't quite have enough good tribe members, to on the cusp of playable by itself. And if we can get a Merfolk Lord, just a real Merfolk Lord, then we could be looking at a legit Merfolk Tier 1 standard deck when Rivals of Ixalan comes out. So probably won't be Lord of Atlantis because of the old formatting, but it could be a Master Scepter, the Pearl Trident, could even be a Marrow Regery. If we can get a Lord like that, or maybe a new version of a Merfolk Lord, then I expect that Merfolk will be a real deck in Standard, which is pretty exciting. The other possibility that I gotta throw in just because I love Panharmonicon so much is Silvergill Adept gives us another sweet 2-drop that draws us cards with Panharmonicon. We do need some amount of Merfolk in the deck to make it work, which is kind of the drawback, but I could imagine a blue-green or Bant-style Panharmonicon deck with Rogue Refiners, maybe Cloud Blazers, maybe Merfolk Branchwalkers, taking advantage of Silvergill Adept and just having like mono creatures that draw a card when they enter the battlefield, drawing 2 cards, 3 cards with Panharmonicon, card advantaging the opponent out of the game. So anyway, Silver Adept, great reprint. Very excited for the possibility of it making Merfolk actually work in Standard. So what do you think of these early spoilers? How good is Galta? Is it going to make Dinosaurs a thing? Can it see playing non-Dinosaur decks? Is it just too inconsistent? What's your opinion there? How about Silvergill Adept? Will this push Merfolk to the forefront of Rivals of Ixalan Standard? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.